on your channel. You got 64,500. I see the videos, but I don't see this one for premiere or anything.
Yeah, they do that sometimes.
If you click on videos, it might show up.
It is. I see your assault on our rights, the high gear, parental rights. That's the last one I see. I don't see anything
hold on,
else
I'm gonna forward.
Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. We have David Dubyne with us from Adapt 2030, and he's having a hard time finding our live because, as you know, they hide these things. Did you find it yet, David?
I did not, and I even have you, I'm subscribed to your channel, obviously, and on my subscription feed, it shows everywhere else that's live, Northwest Liberty News, Code Searcher, whatever, Crypto, hey, shout out Omar, Crypto, but I don't see anything else live on my feed there, and especially not yours, which is interesting. Let me refresh that and see if I can, because, see, I'm also experiencing the same kind of pushback with YouTube and people looking directly for me, and oh, here we go, coronavirus thing. Okay, but my own certain story is, I use TubeBuddy, and then it'll show you inside there after you load your video where you sit on the suggested videos on the right side, so other people can watch your video after they find another. 0 out of 20. So I keep getting the 0 out of 20. Like, I'm unfindable on the sidebar too. So, I used to be on a suggested video, and almost 20% of my traffic did come from suggested videos on the side there. After, now I got 0. I think I have 4% of my traffic comes through suggested videos now. So interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the censorship is it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal, and we have no idea what the true numbers are. I mean, I've had videos up that were not monetized, and yet when you play them, you see ads going through them, but you don't get paid for it.
I know. I get that a lot too, and if they're going to take away the monetization and then they're going to keep it, sheesh. Does it have an end?
No, and we have no way of checking anything. Not that I know of, as far as knowing what the real numbers are.
Well, that seems to be the theme of the day, not knowing what the real numbers are. Even in here in the States, I just saw one of the comments coming across that Paul Cottrell was putting out a few snippets, and I'd also seen that same where there's more than 1,000 confirmed cases here in the U.S. where doctors are forced to sign NDAs, and nurses, especially around in New York. If you want to listen to that, there's a couple tweets up there with somebody who'd called in and given him more information specifically about 8 or 9 cases that were up in New York, and his wife was up there working as a nurse, and then she was forced to sign one of those, but he wasn't, so he relayed the information. Now, I don't know how smart that would be personally, but Cottrell was throwing it out there. He had some numbers, and who else over there? Mike Adams was saying something similar. I can't believe 2 people that would be showing some of the same exact numbers talking about. So they're even masking some of the cases here. I don't know what they're trying to do, either prevent it or make it spread, or who knows,
Right. Yeah, I have a contact that I think is very reliable in Indiana that was saying there's a section of the hospital that is totally off limits for everybody. Nobody could really enter that one section. And so the wife is basically a healthcare worker in there. And that's what the suspicion is that wing, that section is loaded with people that are sick with this.
Yeah, but see, again, like, what was the deflection? Talking about numbers again, think about the 22 countries where people were protesting just even a month ago against, corruption and trade deals and, sanitation and workers' rights and all these other things that, there was a global awakening occurring, a good month ago, and it was starting to snowball where there was more and more, people getting involved and really, trying to make positive change on the ground and pointing out the corruption inside the highest levels of government, inside the highest levels of corporation, and these elitists, quote unquote. And then suddenly that all just dissolved. And I mean, what happened to that? Like, how did this narrative get switched so fast, so ferociously, that all eyes on all the corruption of the highest levels of power on the planet suddenly was squished in about a fifth of a second, and we hear nothing else except this virus and bad business news because of the virus. There's nothing else out there on the news platforms right now, which is shocking. We went from a plethora of corruption being unveiled to the veil being lifted of the true evil on this planet. to now it's the news has been just completely squeezed and rolled into a ball of like two things: bad economics and bad virus. That's it.
Very true. Yeah, it's occupying everybody's minds. You could see it. Everybody's so worried and concerned, and it's very understandable. And that's why, like Cindy was saying, that she didn't know if she really buys it. If it's if it's just well, I mean, there's the thought that this is the venue they could use to put into effect certain projects. I don't know if you've ever heard of Zephyr and Pogo, but they were spoken of by a gentleman who had an accident and is no longer with us. And supposedly there are going to be these projects that get rid of tens of millions of people that are troublemakers of sorts, rabble rousers, people exposing the truth. And boy, this would make a perfect way to do that.
Yeah, Cindy, why do you think you're not buying this at the moment? What's kind of putting up the flag for you there? Where you're saying, wait a second, this is a little too out of control, too little microscopic, everything's focused on it.
It could be, of course, my own cognitive dissonance, but it's a feeling that I've had in my gut since the start that there's some of this being staged, and like I it's just a really strong gut feeling. It's just not anything I can really hang my hat on and say, okay, this is it. But it feels like there's so much deceit at every level. I'm just not exactly sure what to believe.
Okay, because some guys that I talk with that run 5G awareness over in the UK that I've spoken with at Alternative View 10 and 10.1, Mark Steele and Sasha Stone, a few other guys over there, Ian Crane, and John Kitson. These guys are all talking about 5G and some connection between that. I don't know if you all have heard anything about this possible connection to the 5G network and the onset of the virus.
To me, that's the most plausible thing that I can think of, because our energy bodies are so sensitive to EMFs. We really don't understand our energy bodies. They didn't even let us be officially aware until sometime back in 1994, when it was recognized by our government that we do have an energy body called an aura. And that energy body is extremely important. And when that gets screwed up, it can move into the 3D, the dense body, and really throw us around and hurt us.
There's a perfect storm going on with that includes, the lack of nutrition in the food we're eating, and we've touched on that before. And I had a video sent to me by one of our subscribers, and it was a lady that was, linking so much of this together. And I just started to watch like the first 10 minutes of about an hour video. And we know that, like, if you actually look at like a GMO carrot, it has like a tenth of the nutritive value of something that's organically farmed in a small organic farm. And most people just think, well, organic means maybe they didn't put pesticides on it. But it does have more nutrition. But even so, the soil's depleted. We know that Monsanto's been trying to control the seeds, and it's just a mess. We're hit from all different angles. And then we have the skies over our head that's plastered with who knows what, who knows what when you get down to it.
Yeah, because you got to think about China too. I mean, their skies have been plastered with pollution. And it's been an ongoing thing for 2 decades now, just more pollution, no environmental regulation as we understand it, more and more pollution. So you got to think about how detrimental the pollution's been to their bodies as well, just including their lungs and breathing in that gunk every day. I can personally attest to that. That's one of the reasons I left China back, just as more than 10 years ago, just because I couldn't live there anymore. It was just too polluted. And you got to realize that was before the Olympics in 2008. Right up to that time of the Olympics and just a little bit after that. But even then, before it really kicked into high gear with the amount of industry that's really cranking away there now, I mean, it was too overwhelming even at that time. So imagine just being locked in there day after day, grinding, 12, 15-hour days, 6 days a week, and just nonstop with no hope we'll get in a house, or just like you're just like a rodent on a treadmill, And then this thing comes around, everything's so depleted, including the food there too, which I'd like to talk about the food for a moment and later on when our conversation moves that way.
Sure. Whatever, whatever you want to bring up is fine. You probably couldn't even tell in the Chinese skies whether there were chemtrails up there or not because of the pollution, I would venture to guess.
Well, I saw some in my Patreon page. I've been really covering this whole outbreak, and because I live there, so I know all these cities, and I know how all these provinces, and some zones and ports and special economic zones, and how government thinks and such over there. Because I started up a business over there. But when you look at it, the amount of pollution that has stopped because all the cars have stopped, all the factories have stopped. It's like pre-Beijing Olympics, but like times 100. So there's a bunch of before and after photos of the amount of pollution that's being registered by satellite and how clear it's gotten. So I'm really curious now with all of the factory effluent pumping out of the smokestacks when you could see sprayed across the skies.
Yeah, it's crazy, and the brutality that we have seen has been just incomprehensible. And like Cindy was saying, why does it seem like it's always women? Are they just picking on women, or is it just trying to get us irritated and mad? And
yeah, it's almost like they're trying to evoke emotion, because not only was it just women, it seemed like there was a guy who had no legs. They were beating on him.
Yeah.
And what other emotion are you going to evoke besides anger when you see helpless, defenseless souls being beaten?
So, David, you've been in China. Did you fear the police there? I mean, did you really try to go out of your way to avoid them? Was there this sense that at any time you could be plucked off the street and interrogated or just disappear?
No, that never really crossed my mind at all. But the locals are terrified of everything.
They are.
Like for myself, I'll tell you a couple experiences, being a foreigner living there, there's always spies in the building. And, that's what they're counting on this time too, is the local people to spy on each other and rat each other out, to get brownie points because that social credit score is really running amok. And I think that's what you're seeing is some of the people who have low scores getting beaten. But yeah, myself, I've had, I'd be sitting at home, like I just say, we're right here. And then you hear a thump on the door, and then you look out the people, and there's like 6 police officers out there. We want to check your ID, but it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, you know what? My visa's valid, or else I wouldn't be able to live here. So what are you guys doing here harassing me? And you get it like once a month they would come around. And before the Olympics or before a national day or something, they always try to flex their muscles like, yeah, we're just checking. And, it's like, oh, come on, really? I mean, I've been living here for a year in the same building. You guys come back every single month. What do you think? I showed you my work visa that was good for 2 years, and you come back another month later to check and see if my visa is still good. It was, it's like little piddly kind of stuff. One time they came, I don't know, this is like third or fourth, fifth, I can't even remember what time it was that they came by. And I opened the door and I go, hey, I'm talking to somebody long distance on the phone. And then I slammed the door shut and never went back. After a while, it just gets annoying, because the most they could possibly do is like, unless you're breaking the law, nothing really for foreigners. But the locals living there, they have an entirely different situation to deal with, I was, living there as a foreigner, you're like walking between the cracks. You're walking between two worlds, literally. They don't want the trouble because they don't want the trouble with your embassy. And as long as you're not really like stabbing somebody or breaking a law or something like, trying to overthrow the government, they pretty much leave you alone. Truly. As long as you're not doing anything outrageous, they will leave you alone there. They might tap your phone or whatnot, maybe follow you a little bit here and there. But in terms of like pulling you out of your apartment and throwing you in stuck on a chair in a dank room, it doesn't happen really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I just saw a comment that says, "Please be sure to share and subscribe," and it's automatically put up like it has to be approved. It's interesting, like all this stuff that we're getting hit with. It truly is a perfect storm. I know that you've seen the Locust plague that's now hitting China too. Obviously, we've had that going on over in Africa. It's just one thing after another. And talking to you, we know there's food issues that's going to be rampant. And, how much of this is a cover-up? How much of this is, Did you see the video where we're talking about the 2005 statement by this Chinese defense minister that said that it's inevitable that China and the U.S. are going to have a war, and that when the population hit 1.3 billion, by that time, they would have to do something. So he came right out and said that they weren't spending money on aircraft carriers, they were spending money on bioweapons and things like that, because they would release a bioweapon, take out 1 to 200 million U.S. citizens, then they could invade. And then once the U.S. was out of the way, they could take over Canada and Australia and have all that land for Lebensraum, the Nazi term for living space. There's so many different angles to this.
Yeah, I want to twist that angle. See, we heard the exact same rhetoric and the exact same BS back in the 1950s. So walk with me back in time in communist China of Mao's era. Mm-hmm. Now, he said the exact same thing, that we are going to need to fight the Americans, so I want every single woman in this country to have 6 babies. Now, it was called a hero mother, or in Chinese, it's called Inxiong Mama, like Inxiong, like a hero. And you would get an award from the state if you had 6 babies. Well, obviously, most women were like, I want to have 7 babies. I want to have 8. That's why their liabilities for Social Security are so extravagant, because, here in the States, we had 3, 4 babies after, came back from World War II. A lot of the guys, starting families and bigger families would have 3, 4 kids at that time. But in China, it was a requirement for a woman to have 6. Because you know why? Because they said we're going to need all these soldiers to fight the Americans. And the battle never occurred, and those men were never used as cannon fodder. And that's why the overpopulation, why the one-child policy was implemented after that. Because the war never took place. Now you got this bozo over here saying the same thing, like, oh, we need this to have the war with the Americans. Like, how many times can you say that? Literally.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, and then I thought that it's too obvious with the, the stuff being stolen from the Winnipeg biolab facility, that had that report out about the Chinese nationals that were in a spot that they shouldn't have been in. And then it's just kind of like leaving this whole trail that makes up a perfect storyline, But the interesting part with that Chinese general was that he also talked about the biowarfare, and then he talked about, well, you'd have to either kill half our population, or basically have war. So then there was the thought, well, maybe they released it on their own people, and there's just all these different lines out there. I know about the communist. All the propaganda, McCarthy and all that, just selling the fear. And then, that's part of this whole thing too, because it's selling a lot of fear, that's for sure.
Yeah, and, it almost reads like a thriller spy novel, because, one of my patrons today sent me a supposedly leaked, well, not a leak, but it was written by a supposed insider from the Chinese high-level government that visited one of those hospitals that were built, and there were supposedly 3 sections where this guy visited the inner sanctum where they had people throwing bodies in furnaces, and he was going, I can't tell you too much because I'm going to get identified. Well, I was thinking, all right. And then his son got sick, all right? So he's like, first of all, the guy's English was like as perfect as any, magazine writer could be anywhere, that like natively born English speaker, that's a writing journalist degree kind of writing. And then secondly, the way he's like, well, I don't want to be identified, but I'm one of the only guys who's ever been in the middle of this thing, and my son's sick. Like, dude, how easy would it be to narrow you down in like 3 seconds of who visited in the last 3 weeks in this place and whose son's sick? Okay. And it was written almost too much as a spy novel. Like, it was really written exactly like you're trying to say, like, all the breadcrumbs are there and all the pieces are in place, and it was stolen by this thing, and it's going to do this, and it's 100% kill rate, and they're going to do that, and I can't believe, it's just like, at the end of it, I was like, man, that was well written. It was a really well written piece. It's almost like Dean Kuntz's book. I don't know if somebody sent me a thing here, the Dean Kuntz book, The Eyes of Darkness. And on page, it's either 555 or page 333, which is super interesting. They call the stuff Wuhan 400 because it developed an rDNA lab. Wait a second, we heard this saying. That's exactly what that is, right outside the city of Wuhan. So they were even talking about this in 1981. So the way the guy's account was written about he was an insider and he saw this stuff, It's too James Bondy, too perfectly written. Like there was not a grammar or a comma out of place. I mean, that was a crazy, if that was, and I never met anybody in China living there all those years that wrote that good of English. Never. So I'll leave it there.
So yeah, crazy. Great minds think alike. I was just pulling that link up, and I have it up right in front of us here, talking about the Wuhan 400, the Dean Koontz book. And I don't know if you caught last night's, but the other coincidence too. Do you remember the movie The Stand? The whole book, The Stand, by Stephen King. They just did a remake now. Perfect timing.
I don't know that one.
Oh yeah, no, I read that when I was like a pretty young kid. It's basically the same thing. It's like a biowarfare, germ is released and it wipes out like 90 something percent of the population. And then it's just about the good people gathering and going, I think it was Georgia or Alabama, something like that. And all the evil ones gather and go to Las Vegas. And then you have basically like the Antichrist there in Vegas. And it's like the Battle of Armageddon. It was a classic. It's a Stephen King book that was turned into a movie back in the 80s, I think. And then now in 2020, they just redid it into a series, actually. So it's just so interesting because it starts with just, you're just panning over all these population centers and there's nobody alive. Everybody's dead. Birds are dead. Animals are dead. Everything's dead. And then you do discover a couple of survivors, and then more and more survivors come together. It feels like your typical zombie apocalypse, except for it's a biowarfare thing that was released. So interesting timing again. And there was one other one too besides this Dean Koontz that talked about Wuhan and a bioweapon. I forget who it was now, but I think it was out in the 50s that there was something written about this too. I'd have to go see if I could find where I saw that again. It's just amazing. It's like we're living this big movie script.
Yeah, it is, because you got to think about it. Back in the 1980s, Wuhan was an unknown backwater. Like, to even say that there'd be some kind of a facility or 11 million people living in that city back then, you'd be laughed off the street. Are you kidding? Wuhan? Are you kidding me? That's a farming community. And even when you look at these big giant places like Shenzhen, like 30 years ago, that was a fishing village where now 20 million people live. So for somebody to pick this town that nobody even barely knew of even now until this whole thing came out and people know where it is, that's just really bizarre in my opinion, because just the progression from Shenzhen and then the whole way of moving forward with that in the last 30 years. I mean, sheesh. Since 1990s, and then to pick this particular city and a book name in 1981. Yeah, it's a bit bizarre, but
tapping into the collective. Yeah, is it tapping into the collective consciousness? Is it some sort of ESP psychic phenomenon, or somebody that is somehow leaking stuff out? Part of a plan going way forward. It's really interesting. But one thing it's doing is it's locking down society. And when you have the WHO, they were praising China and saying everybody's going to have to, follow the measures China's doing. And I don't know if you've seen all the videos we've seen with the brutality, saying that and knowing what we've seen is, something that should definitely cause alarm. And how many people are infected now here, and how real is this anyway? Is it just that everybody is completely immune suppressed and it's a frequency thing that's triggering this? How do we really know?
Or is it a placebo to bring it on? See, that's another thing. Like, knowing that mind is bendable with reality and vice versa, and all the news has gone to this, or they're trying to make it manifest by using us for its manifestation of it. Like, is AI driving this thing, or is trying to create the perfect set of, you're barraged with it at every place, left, right, and center, and then you're the ones who actually creating the reality of this lockdown situation I kind of question that at times too, versus coming at it with understanding these are massive changes here energetically, and embrace the changes and ride that gigantic, huge 100-foot wave of power through this whole thing. Versus, coming back at it's like it's being programmed into the matrix using us to make it manifest. I've had some strange thoughts about this thing the last few days.
Well, I know the first time we ever talked, we focused more on the positive that was coming. We focused more on the consciousness and where we're heading with things. And I know for a fact, being an energy worker and somebody that practices QiGong, that it's way easier. Every day that goes by, it's easier to affect change with our consciousness. So, that could be done and used in a positive or in a malevolent way.
Yeah, and again, this AI's gotten way too far out of control for us. So who's to say it's not already taken over full on? And I'm at the realm of it with these deep fakes that are going on. Like, could an AI, if it was intelligent enough, already create the news by itself without real newscasters behind there to be able to fake the news enough to get humans to believe that it was real? You know what I mean? Because it's so strange that nobody's allowed in from the West into China. You're not allowed to go in and see it. All we see are just satellite images from Null School or something showing us that pollution has stopped in the country, and got tankers backed up as far as the eye can see across the horizon. But what's really going on? All we're seeing is videos out of there. I haven't been in there, so I can't say that. No Westerners are allowed in to visit this right now. So what's really going on there?
Right.
Is it truly like that, or are we seeing just manipulated images trying to bend our reality through this? I don't know. I really don't. Because the brutality, again, what you're seeing is, it seems like an oppressed person their entire life has finally gotten just to rage on whatever they want to rage on right now. It's almost like one of those bizarro movies where it's like a 24-hour period where you can go do whatever you want with no police and no laws or anything. And it seems like that is happening right now, too. So you're getting this blend of strangeness, I should say.
So you have recently traveled, on an airplane, come back into the country, and what was your experience too? Because we never really got to talk about that. I know there's a lot of people that have been doing, their own self-isolation over here, and you sound great. You sound like you have tons of energy and like you were all rested up, after having escaped that whole thing over there.
Well, yeah, you got to realize I was over in Prague and Vienna for like 2.5 weeks, and then our flight got canceled coming back through China. So we're like, all right, need to go back to Taiwan. Luckily, I don't even live in the city. I live out, and we got an Uber back from the airport. I packed my stuff, and then a day and a half later, didn't barely leave the house at all, except to get back in another Uber and head back to the airport. And then I shot back through San Francisco. And again, my disillusion there in San Francisco is, knowing that this is a couple weeks ago. So knowing that the level of contamination that was coming out of China already, and they knew this already, but say February 1st, what was going on, that stuff had been going, happening already. It was making news by the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of February, whatever. But I come back in through San Francisco, and those checkpoints where you need to go in, and you have to, they feel you up and strip you down, and you got to put your bags through the X-ray machine and all that stuff. Those kind of those TSA checkpoint things. Anyway, they make you put your shoes into a bin, and then the next person behind you, and then you got to put your backpack in there, and then your coat's in there. Well, there's only 200 of these bins. But then the shoes are in there, and then they're just recirculating the bins again and again and again. So, how much cross-contamination from your shoes or my shoes went on the next person's jacket or next person's phone or next person's laptop or next person's backpack, and vice versa? You think the very bare minimum they could have done is broken it into two. All right, these are only for shoes. And then they would disinfect them once in a while. And then those only for personal goods over there. But they combined everything. It's almost like they wanted it to spread by, because that stuff was known already to stick on inanimate objects. And here we are working on, anybody, how many thousands of people had come on Asian flights that day that walked down carpets, and that stuff could have been stuck on the shoes and then putting it in the bins. And how much recirculation in San Fran, because already that's a hot spot. And then I just look at it and go, oh, So luckily, I got back here, and then I kept myself out of everything for like almost 2 weeks, and totally good. Luckily, I was in Europe when almost this happened. I was only back in Taiwan for like a day and a half, and really nothing was going on at that time. And I'll tell you another lucky thing about Taiwan is they had the spat with the Chinese government back in like July-ish of 2019, where the Chinese government forbid any tour groups to come over to Taiwan for travel, and they forbid any individual travelers from coming over to Taiwan for travel. So during this Chinese New Year, when all those people supposedly escaped Wuhan and everybody was blazing all over the planet, no mainland Chinese were allowed in Taiwan. So the whole brunt of the infection movement just skipped over the island. Now, when it did occur was I was already gone, but when people came back from Chinese New Year, the Taiwanese that had ancestral roots that always go home to mainland China for Chinese New Year, and if they came back on the 10th or the 9th or the 10th or something and flew back in, and then you saw a huge spike in cases in Taiwan. Well, luckily I was in that super grace period of most of the time we were in Europe, came back, no Chinese were there allowed in, nobody was around at that time anyway, because Chinese New Year was in full swing. They got out, and they came back here and chilled out for a couple months or a couple weeks. Nice cabin, good plush, real nice, relaxed environment. But I was so shocked that they would let the shoes mix with the personal items and spread it that way. I firmly believe it was meant to spread. You can call me a crazy nut or whatever you want to do, but I think this thing is wanted and made and pushed to spread around because they can achieve so many goals on the global ascent. The bigger and the wider this thing spreads.
Well, the WHO moved so incredibly slow, and then now they went to the opposite extreme and praised the Chinese government for their brutality. Yeah, I gotta ask you, did you ever see any acts of brutality like that? I know you said bullying, but did you ever see people like face planted on the ground like you held and kicked and
Never, ever, not even once. I am so shocked. But the thing is, I'm watching here, these are political dissidents that are being rounded up. So these are not quarantine victims. These are political dissidents. This is another purge in a communist purge. And in terms of, let's say, Cultural Revolution 2.0, this is it right here. So what you're looking at here, these people have been identified as either starting being part of the protesters that have, because you gotta realize Wuhan had the biggest protest last year in all of China. So anybody who started a protest group or organized anything against the government there, these are those people you're looking at. They're the ones who are chained up. They're the ones who are beaten. Those were the ones identified through facial recognition and told by the new shock troops to take them out. I guarantee it's a political purge, and that's exactly what happened. Sad as it is, you can see where AI and where all this technocracy has taken us, where they're rounding people up because they put a tweet out that said, hey, sure, I'll go join your protest. Those are the same people that are being rounded up right now. Mm-hmm. They show disloyalty to the party, and they will definitely not be seen again.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible and sad, but I agree totally. I totally agree. I feel that's what this is. Yeah, I feel it's a purge. I do.
These guys are, I have two people saying the music is too loud, they can't hear.
Okay, did the music go now, guys? Did the music stop?
I don't even have any music on.
No, let's see. It might have been the last link I put up.
Yeah, Cindy, did you see the links I sent you through there? I sent you those 3 links. Again, they were compilations of this kind of police brutality there.
Yeah, it stopped. Okay, so it was just the last link, I guess, had the music on. I couldn't hear it.
No, I didn't, because I don't know how to multitask his phone screen. Oh, wait. I think I got you on my phone screen.
I sent it through Skype into the chat box there. So okay. I have 3 links, and what they are is very similar to what you were showing me. They're just compilations of people who found the most, crazy brutality of the police acting far, 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 far out of what is considered normal. Like a woman with her child, that was only one view. Like they threw her face planting down and her baby comes spilling out and like bounced on the sidewalk a few times. I mean, just like, what is going on over there? See, that's political purge. Mm-hmm. That's not arrest because you're not wearing a mask or you had the wrong license plate or something. That's what you do to political prisoners.
And this is the perfect cover. I mean, we looked at the Yellow Vest protest. Yellow Vest too in France. Now, nobody's paying attention to that. And, as it spreads, there's not going to be any any protest, because I mean, how can you get out there and protest when you don't want to get infected? I mean, we're being told don't go and congregate in groups and everything else. So this is the perfect way to shut all that down.
Yeah, wait until it becomes law that you're not allowed to gather in more than groups because of the quarantine. Then they can legally shut everything down across the planet.
Yeah, it just seemed like they were trying to push how horrific it was, and they needed people to believe that it was horrific. So hopefully we'll just go quietly and do what they say because we're so fearful of this virus. It's just what it felt like to me. I was having a really hard time stepping into the truth of it, and all of its glory as it being a true sickness. So to me, this makes more sense, that they are using it for a cover. But God, I really hope that virus is not I hope the virus still isn't out there. I still am concerned about a virus being out there. I act concerned. I don't go everywhere. If I do go somewhere, I clean myself up.
But still, the other thing too is how many of these people, like there was a video I showed yesterday, and it was maybe about 4 or 5 blocks that they were driving along, and there was just body after body covered in, not necessarily in body bags, but just covered all along the streets. Now, I don't know if they pulled those out of buildings and they were just waiting to be rounded up and incinerated. But how do you know, that really what is going around is maybe not even something that's so deadly, and the deadliness is when these dissenters or anybody that's on the blacklist is executed one way, shape, or form. We just don't know really, because if you look at the stats, it's not truly that deadly. I mean, how many people are on lockdown now? I mean, some people are saying there's 900 million on lockdown now. And we have 1,873 official deaths, 73,325 confirmed according to the official numbers. Yeah, it obviously doesn't add up.
Yeah, I have some new number counts here now. I have been following the groups of doctors. Let me see if I can send you this. The groups of doctors who have an underground network of smuggled SD chips or SD cards or whatever's coming out of your phone. They compile that and get it over to Hong Kong. And then also the count. And what I mean by the count is they call it Chinese whispers, where, one doctor will go, like 300 people died in our hospital today and they only put 6 on the books. Well, they're compiling all these Chinese whisper reports from all the doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, frontline medical workers. And here's the number from today. I'll send it to you. And you can read it out on air here. But this is from the Chinese Whisper Network is what they call it. It's the best English translation I can get. About 3 million infected and 250,000 plus have died. Now, see, that would make more sense with the response. But still, it doesn't make that much sense for the response, Unless there was not going to be enough food already and the political purge was happening, and anybody below a certain score, because this whole social credit score has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed for how many, for at least 5-6 years now. Got to get on the social credit score. Got to keep a certain level. Gonna lose your job. Can't travel on the train. Can't take an airplane. Whatever. If your score gets too low. So imagine if they just been compiling slowly, silently, always catching everybody's tweet, using AI to catch anybody's tweet who's ever been against the government, ever, even one fraction of a thing. And now they just go out and say everybody who's ever spoken out against the government gets rounded up. That's what they did in the Cultural Revolution. It's just this time they're using technology to do it. Because there won't be enough food this year for sure in China. Who's going to plant? That's my whole thing is, who is going to plant the field? They should be planting in southern China right now. It's the first weeks. Like when they come up to the end of February here, they should be getting the fields ready right now for planting on like March 1st would probably be a good date to shoot for. Because generally they'd be out there getting the fields preparing right now. So after Chinese New Year, that's what the families would go do. They'd go home, especially in the southern part of the country. It's already warming up a little bit. And get the fields ready for planting next month. Right now is when they'd be, but there's nobody out there. You got millions of ducks and stuff dying from nobody's feeding them. And now who's going to plow the millions and millions of acres this year and plant the corn and the wheat in China this year? Nobody.
Yeah, it's true. And it's just going to amplify as this goes and spreads across the globe, whether that's complete reality or just the semblance of it. And, some people have wondered, again, early on we were talking about, is this basically genetically manufactured so it's going to attack people with a certain ethnicity, a DNA background? And it was looking like that's the case. And you know, the numbers, they're still holding to what? 15 in the U.S., which we know has got to be complete lies. It's just, I know everybody is really, you have a population that is growing ever more suspicious. So, you know, it makes you wonder, when how are we going to react if they try to lock us down like that? And I don't know if you caught the interview with Dr. Paul. I mean, Cottrell, he was kind of openly pushing for armed revolution, it sounded like right now. He was kind of, he was worked up, most definitely. I'm not sure if you caught that or not.
I didn't. I was on an interview with Paul not too long ago, and he didn't. Okay, so there's mobile crematoriums now in China running around, in addition to the static ones that have always been there, just for the regular daily use during the last years. But now, have you seen the mobile crematoriums? And then they put out a tender offer for more mobile crematoriums, and they're changing over a lot of factories to start making medical supplies. So one example is a good example. Paper supplier, paper manufacturer. Well, obviously, since the paper, they can just change the type of paper, and now they can make, those surgical face masks. Well, there's a tender offer out there now for 1 million body bags just for use in China. So, I mean, you got to tell me, are they planning already? I mean, it's really a drop in the bucket. 1 million, I mean, you're looking at just like a fraction of the population, but still, it's a lot.
So, let me ask you on a more personal note. I know you must have been running around like crazy ever since you got back here. Have you upped your prepping to all new degrees? Have you been stockpiling? And how are things going on over there at the Dubyne household?
I don't know what prepping is. What is that? Never heard of it. I don't know what you mean.
So, boy, it's a new world we live in, and that's basically what I put for the title. Now that the coronavirus is here, will life ever be the same? Where do we go from here? It's just like, Big Brother is clamping down like we've never seen before. I mean, we've seen horrible regimes, and we've had Hitler and Stalin and Mao, and we could go back throughout history, but this is such an opportunity for an absolute complete lockdown like we haven't seen, globally.
It's also an opportunity for these heightened energies with our sun shifting into this grand solar minimum for us to just blast through that fist that tries to lock down. The tighter they hold on, the more power we get and spring out in motion, as in some martial arts, as you're well familiar. So these energetic changes, I really think it's the last time of this dark energy on this planet to try to suppress us as humans before we blast out into this new energy realm. These frequency changes in the sun are no joke. I mean, all these cosmic rays coming through, and now we have real physical energetic changes coming off our sun. There's light spectrum differences, UV changes, electromagnetic changes in our brains. Obviously, things are going to be way different for our species as well moving forward, and just the way we process. And that the 22 or up to 24 countries, just like even last month, that we're starting to question a lot of how they were being overseen, the banking system, the corporations, the contracts for their natural resources, and all this corruption. That was just a tip of the iceberg of what we're starting to discover. So with these heightened energies of our sun moving forward as well, you can expect a lot more changes. And, I think this is the fight between light and dark right now. This is it. So instead of saying we have no power, we should take that power and run with it. And because I was watching this George Washington special because it's President's Day. I had a chance to watch part of this George Washington special here. And just when they thought they were trapped up in Philadelphia, they ended up pushing through, because it was the resolve of those people. It was the British didn't want to be there. They just were there for the paycheck. But the people who are here, they're the resolve of winning at all costs. And that's where we are with the dark versus light. There is no lockdown.
Yeah, it's
what you can possibly make it. So I'm saying if 1 billion people start to think the same thing on the same day about there is no lockdown and we can defeat this, or 2 billion people or 4 billion people start thinking the same thoughts and like focusing that energy on these changes that we need for the positive versus the dark here, that's where we need to go.
I love
and
that.
Throw in a little frequency with it. I do agree. Throw in some frequency with it. So imagine your thought and like a certain frequency vibration of everybody tuned into 528 on audible speakers on 528 hertz, along with your minds pushing that blasting wave energy out. Are you telling me we'll not make change with billions of people thinking the same thing at 528 vocally in the air across the waves here? Wow, that'd be powerful.
Yeah, it's a matter of coming together and banding together and being positive and focusing on the positive, turning the fear. At some point you have to change that fear. Often you could turn the fear to anger, but it has to be a constructive type of anger. And interesting what you were reading. I keep going back. I just reread the Bhagavad Gita again.
Good one.
Yeah, and it's like, because you could look at it and say, Jesus said turn the other cheek, but here, Krishna is telling Arjuna there comes a time when you have to fight. When you have to stand up and, you can't back down from evil, but you have to do it in such a way, that it brings about a positive change. And that's something a lot of people do struggle with, those thoughts. And, I'm a pacifist at heart, but at the same time, I support the Second Amendment. And, I'd love to see, like all our troops come back. And I'd love to see, more power be given back to the states, because they control us through Big Brother. And the government is so big, and it's so big for a purpose, because they need it that way to control us. And, the more we could step outside of this matrix and band together with doing things like bartering and trade and, building smaller communities, cooperating, with each other, stepping outside of the money matrix, because that's one of the things that keeps us, locked up into their system. The more we could do that, the better. And there are a lot of people that really, really are dying to get out of the system and come together in any way they can. So, I think that's where we're going to be when we do break out of the system. I think we'll go back to having respect for the planet itself, which they don't. They have no respect for the planet. All these die-offs we're seeing everywhere, and so many of them could be attributed to things like Fukushima and toxic poisons that are, just in the runoff. It's just atrocious. So, we have to step out of the system. And then I did a video today talking about how they're trying to take away people's rights with forced vaccinations and things like that as well. Excuse me, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cindy, what are you thinking here about this light versus dark?
Oh my goodness, it is. It gets deep. It goes into things that obviously we cannot see, forces that we're unaware of and we're blind to, and that's part of why we need to wake people up. One of those things that we can do to help ourselves and wake up is our diet. You said you wanted to talk about that a little bit. The food that we eat turns into a human. If we eat a Snickers bar, we're trying to turn that into a human being ultimately. And our diet becomes so extremely important to help raise our vibration, because if our vibration is up there, these darker forces have no choice but to fall off of us. They cannot stay.
And they will flee.
Yeah, it's true. And I encourage any of you out there, if you go to the store Look for black-eyed peas or any kind of beans that you can sprout and then turn into microgreens. I found these black-eyed peas have a real nice microgreen that comes out real snappy, and it grows tall, really succulent, and really delicious as well. It's one of my favorites. Super easy to find. You can get a bag for $1.50, and you can make good 3 trays out of one bag. And it's just, if the supply chains do break down and you don't have a chance to grow your own, you're going to have to, do something quickly. And microgreens are a good way to go. Not sprouts so much, but the microgreens. And you can always have a fresh vegetable supply right there, right at your fingertips, as long as you know how to, get the beans now. If you can get a 20-pound bag, 50-pound bag, that'll last you, 6 months or something, and have constant sprout or microgreens coming out of there. So supply chain issues and, taking more reliance on having true healthy food. Because if you're growing those microgreens yourself, you know exactly where they came from. You're putting your energy into them, like your love, literally energy in. It's so fun to watch them grow, rub the tops of them, feel the plants, and you know where it's coming from. And it's good, clean, healthy food with super nutrients in it. It's just the little things. It's the little things. And you're going to have to rely more on yourself for the little things, because you already see, I'm calling it right now, bold call here. Walmart going to have some very serious difficulties in the next, probably like a month from now, because they get 70% of their stuff manufactured in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And what we eat really matters right now to keep those darker energies away from us and keep our life force strong. And any little thing we can do, is going to be of monument value here shortly. In my humble opinion, anyway, it does look like things are going to change drastically to me.
Yeah, describe that drastically. That's
well,
a big word to use there. It's scary on me.
It is. I know. It's a big vocabulary word there. Drastically.
No, I don't mean like that. I mean like big implications of the whole thing. Not the word itself, but like huge implications with that word.
Oh, yes. Indeed. Well, things with Walmart's supply chain, because so many of us, I can even include myself in there, go into Walmart and we just have these expectations that things are simply going to be there. So we're in a state of expectation here. When you get comfortable with things and then suddenly you get thrown a curveball, that can throw you into fear and you can make bad decisions. So for us, to me, I do believe it's going to be drastic when people see those supply chains start to break down. It could put some people into a little bit of shock. Is that okay?
And again, the powers that be would love that shock even more, because then it's like more, don't protect us, so we don't have anything. I'm sure we'll line up and do whatever you want. Just give us food.
Right.
That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you gave me an idea. Maybe I should set up a time for a live and just simply have some, like 528 hertz music going, and it could be just a quiet time live with positive intentions. People could talk in the chat room and, just a healing, send out healing intentions and start doing that on a regular basis. Couldn't hurt, that's for sure.
Yeah, and especially if there's a particular thought, that you come into the chat room here, and then the thought is this, and please everybody focus on this thought with it, really, because what do you got? How many people watching now here? Like almost, 650. That's, by putting that much vibrational energy out there, you're going to pull in more people too that are attuned to the field and want the change versus the fear. You're going to start to see, like vibrations start to come together like magnets, I do believe now. So I like that idea. And, it'd have to be whatever thought and a certain time, and I think that could be a go. And I'm sure people will come back again and again, because, eventually people are going to just get tired of all the fear, where they want to come over and get something positive and come into a positive space. And This is, where it needs to be. And that's a great idea.
Yeah. Alice Bailey, which would be a name that scares a lot of fundamentalists, channeled something called the Great Invocation, and I was thinking modifying something like that would be acceptable to people of all faiths, because what it is it's basically just a prayer, asking that peace will descend into the minds and the hearts of everybody, directly from source into the hearts and the minds of humankind, and thus implanting itself into the planet and dissolving the evil that has been here. I mean, as she put it, lock the door where evil dwells, is how she worded it. She basically said, may light enter, light enter the minds of humanity, and love enter the hearts of humanity. Something along those lines. Make it a mantra. And if everybody would just take like 5 minutes even just to say the mantra and, vibrate the words, because we know there's power in vibration. And Cindy and I, we do mantras every day on a daily basis. And probably, traditionally you do multiples of 108 repetitions per mantra, or you could just go with one mantra and multiples of 108. But we'll go through, 5 or 7 cycles, and I'm not even sure how much time we spend, probably 40 minutes to an hour, and then just stay in silent meditation after. And it's really what grounds us. And it's amazing. I could feel like stressed and irritated and crappy. And as soon as I get done, I feel perfectly blissful and so peaceful.
We do. It's like, it's like being high. It really is. You can feel your cells vibrating at a higher rate. I think it has a lot to do with our own voice, like our own vocals. That does something. And when you say these things, not only does it change your energetic field, brings up your vibration, it just helps you. And then you're sending out that frequency. And of course, you're going to receive what you send. And that just makes it important.
Not everybody would like this one, but I'll just read what it says. And again, something like this could be modified so that it be acceptable to people of every faith. But it says, from the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men, let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men, may Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let love, light, and power restore the plan on earth. Meaning that the original plan, because we are... we have been taken over by these beings that are not in the planet's or anything that's living on the planet's best interests. And so, that's what she's talking about there. And when she says the little wills of men, because mankind doesn't have a clue of who they are. They have amnesia, so we don't recognize our power, our creative power, because we've been so implanted with this sense of a false sense of limitation. And that's been done so that we give our power away. And, that's the bottom line. So something modified like that would be beautiful.
And we could call it the end of ancient evil.
That's perfect. Yeah, most definitely. Because we've been so manipulated to completely be dogmatic. And it's through dogma and politics that, we've been controlled. And if we can't let go of the dogma, we're going to get more of the same forever. It's just the way it is until they decide that it's time to purge, like the, purge of Enlil. If we go into the Sumerian records, just wipe them all out. Let's start over again.
Yeah, and with these changes in the grand solar minimum, perhaps they know the food won't be enough coming up this next grow season, because we look at the the wet conditions again here across the U.S. We look at a non-plant going on in China at the moment. You got the locust nibbling everything from India all the way into Central Africa, clear over to the Atlantic Ocean. And these are the biggest these are the biggest amount of locusts ever sighted in, I wouldn't say human history, but at least since the rain cycle's coming back, where there's much more vegetation for these locusts to nibble on. Like they wouldn't be there if there wasn't changes in climatic patterns, putting more rain down where more plants can grow across these regions that they haven't been there for centuries and centuries. So, like you say, with Enlil, maybe they're thinking, well, it's time for the shift. So, but again, the shift can go either direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do believe that there's beneficial beings out there. Like when she said in that verse talking about the masters, she's talking about what people would call the ascended masters. Or if you're coming out of the Vedic tradition, those are the rishis, the seers, the ones that actually wrote the Vedas. And that's the thing that's so sad, is because there's certain people in certain traditions that they're so conditioned that they can't recognize the validity of another person's language, saying something in a slightly different term, or, having the same message, but yet, different place, different people. It's just, if you actually read the Bhagavad Gita, you get the bigger picture, because it sounds like the positive stuff that we take out of the Bible. It sounds like a lot of the actual quotes of Christ, and it's coming from Krishna. And, I've done a lot of videos going down that line as well. And, of course, you always get resistance. It's because of the conditioning, unfortunately. And again, that's how they keep us divided. But it's time to throw all that away, because it's all about where's our heart at. It's all about what do we want to manifest, and to stop arguing with each other over any sort of thing that's dogmatic. Because we could do that until we're all exterminated, or we could decide that maybe the way you view things has validity, maybe the way I view things has validity, maybe there's more than one path. And of course the dark side wants to program that there's only one path with one people, and go to another people and there's only one path. And that way we're always fighting each other, and that way we're always divided. Tower of Babel again. Come, look, they're united. They build a tower up to the heavens. Maybe that tower was symbolic of having a high advanced civilization that was ready to become a galactic civilization. Come, let us go down there. And they did. And there's definitely been wars of the gods from other cultures around the world, not just the Vedic cultures, talking about the Vimanas and the wars of the Devas and the Asuras. But we see it also. We had Raven on, and Raven is Cherokee, and he was sharing the legends of the Cherokee, which they believe are totally real. And it's the same thing, and it's the same thing with the Hopi, and same all around the globe. There's these same stories. But they're not all bad entities. There are good entities out there too, that are waiting to help us if we ask. So, but good entities will respect free will. So, they won't intrude, where these negative ones view us as an asset, or as sheeple, and perhaps it's, in their mind, it's time to call the herd.
Food at the trough, the feeding trough.
Yeah, most definitely. And like
I shall extricate myself from the feeding trough. Thank you very much. My choice.
Yeah, and I was thinking that, I've been debating too, doing some like we do not consent videos. I'm not sure how far they would go or what they would look like. And Dr. Paul had said, in a heated moment, have you contacted your, representatives and stuff? We could do that, and I was thinking about doing that with, the spraying over our heads, because how do we know that's not what they're spraying? We don't know that. So we got to wake people up to that, and then, take it as high as we can, and while we still can assemble a little bit or venture out in public before, now I'm starting to remember my dream from last night. It was about that type of stuff, being locked down with the military on streets and all. So let's hope.
No way. Go deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I did see that, and I've seen, basically, I've had dreams I shared before, like going back to when I was 19. I had the first dream of like a Red Dawn type situation, but the U.S. being attacked. I wouldn't doubt it, but there again, and I'm not sure if you saw, there was a leaked, quote unquote, another one of those leaked things making the rounds of a Chinese official that was saying that what you think is the true situation is not the true situation, and then he said coronavirus situation's much worse. However, these countries of the world are working together and basically saying they're all using this as an opportunity to lock down and get rid of their own dissenters, and I could buy that.
Unfortunately, you can. That's what a twisted world we live in. It can only get better from here as long as we try to make it better. I try to keep myself in a good mind space, but the stuff we're working with here on YouTube and over on the Patreon channel, at least my Adapt 2030 Patreon channel, to do all the Chinese stuff where I'll get demonetized or lose my channel if I put it on YouTube. It's like delving into both worlds, like looking at the craziness and then try to keep a level head after you come out of that for 4 or 5 hours a day. It might be easier said than done, but at least I've dealt with this kind of stuff, trying to, come in, learn all this stuff, and then just brush it off like, oh, that was just information. I'll just change my mind frame here. Because, learning about this grand solar minimum and the vast changes that were anticipated anyway, with the amount of food that we could grow on this planet and the amount of food we could give to people comparatively to what it used to be as we come into really low harvests here and really low yields. Even worse, so this year will probably be less than last year, and last year was dismal at best. So, thinking about it, would there be enough food for, 7.5 billion people moving forward into 2022? My answer personally, I feel, would be no. So how would you deal with that prior to it happening? Because I guarantee you every government on the planet knows about this grand solar minimum. They know the repercussions of it. They know what's happened historically over the last, 8 or 10 of these grand solar minimums going back 4,500 years, how it's affected society so greatly every one of these turns that comes. Now we're here at this point again. How would you handle it as a set of global leaders? What would you do? Because China falls every grand solar minimum anyway. So I think personally this is the next beginning of the fall for China, and it's right in a grand solar minimum. So everything seems to be right on cue again for a lot of repeating cycles and a lot of repeats in history, just a different way to come out again this time. So would you reduce the population so you can control them and control the food supply before things got too uncontrollable, where no matter how hard you tried after, there'd be no control, where you'd lose total control of the food supply and total control of the infrastructure and total control of the energy supply? Or would you make a fictitious thing happening now and then set precedent, control it, lock it down right now so you would have control as we come into these really crazy changes coming up in a couple of years?
We've talked about China's moves in Africa and over in South America, try to secure food and control resources. I would think that a regime in danger like that would look to do whatever they can, and a lot of times, if you could find an enemy, it makes things easy. What if they were to come out and say, it was the U.S. that did this to us, or something like that, to try to fuel people in anger, or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just simply, basically, I guess I'm asking you, how likely do you think it is that they'll try to do something militarily to try to get things off, distract, move the attention away if they're going to start to lose power? Why not declare a war somewhere? Why not go invade somebody and take somebody over?
Well, for China at the moment, I think that's a little difficult, since 800 or 900 million of them are locked in their homes. And, finding that the military is now starting to get sick too. So you might use these peons down there to try to do street thug enforcement, but they're all getting sick too. So don't know what, even with their protective clothing not helping them. So you can only get the military to go so far to carry out so many orders, because they're realizing that, hey, that protective gear you said worked doesn't work. Made in China. Don't get the protective
Ouch.
Oh.
China.
That was brutal. But you know what? The truth is kind of brutal sometimes.
No,
Yeah.
I wasn't being condescending in any way, shape, or
No,
form.
you
I was just
didn't.
saying.
No, not that way. You didn't come off that way. It was just true. It's all good. All good. And here we have this going on. They're helping each other here. It looks like.
This is exactly what you said. It's somebody in full PPE, and they're passing out. So
Yeah.
how much now? And there has been reports lately of that too. Of the protective equipment. I've seen more than one person quoting this, more than one source quoting that it doesn't seem to be working. So I think that would also kind of make you wonder. Well, I suppose it could get on the food. It could get on anything. Who knows? Just how widely dispersed it is.
Frequency, maybe, because after talking with Mark Steele, he's one of the guys who he invented and developed the ocular, the single sight eye display for the equivalent of the Cobra helicopter over in the UK. So he was the head developer for the ocular sighting system. He's saying that for sure 5G can target in and start hitting cellular disruption, and he went through a whole range of frequencies to the sub-gigahertz frequency before it gets to 1 gigahertz. And now a lot of information is coming out saying that at 60 gigahertz you can affect oxygen molecules and actually get down into where the electrons are affected, holding that bond together, where an O2 doesn't become an O2 anymore. It splits at that electron level. That's how much effect these frequency waves have on. Were you talking about breaking the literal electrical structure of a molecule, breaking it back down and causing changes in the air through a frequency? This is where it gets scary, but he's saying absolutely 1,000% sure that that can be used in any type, in so many more applications for military than we're given. They say it's to get faster download speeds, whatever, but he's saying no. That's a Trojan horse, my friends. They're really using it. And when you see this, I mean, is there something with a frequency change in the 5G grid around there, and then she's being affected by this? I just don't. There's so many unknowns now because the electromagnetic frequency soup that we live in, and our bodies are not handling this. Perhaps I don't know, is it a combo of both? I just don't know. But there's so much information for both being valid. Now, what if they're overlapping? Then, yeah, because a lot of this protective equipment through these professionals here, you've seen like half the doctors are sick now. Mm-hmm. Military's getting sick over there. Even the Japanese people escorting those off of cruise ships got sick, 2 of them. So if they're in full hazmat suits and they're getting sick, what's going on? It's got to be something beyond just the germ.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the virus, sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, frequency makes sense, and I agree with that totally. I've been trying for days to locate a video that I think is completely purged now. I saw it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a guy talking about DARPA, and he was talking about nanotech that could be sprayed on the battlefield in a certain jet stream, in such a way that know the way the prevailing winds are, and this would go over soldiers. The enemy's soldiers, they would inhale it, and then you could send a signal out, and it would basically get the nanotech to just bore through their lungs, and they would die in droves without ever shooting a single bullet.
Yeah, because I like that idea of the 5G activated nanotech, because it could, those either, think about this, either what would be bacteria or virus could lie dormant until they're activated with the frequency. Nanotech, what you're talking about, I'm sure it's much more highly advanced than we even possibly know. Perhaps that's activated also by a certain frequency. Maybe it's like 16.3277 gigahertz or something, and that activates it. But no other frequency will. But that's the exact tuned in frequency that'll activate some kind of what you're talking about, a little nanobot to bore through and just like start shaking and twisting, and maybe it has sharp edges on it or jagged edges, and it just causes it to spin in a circle. Maybe that's all it does. It agitates those little nanoparticulates to start spinning in a circle, but they're already jagged when you breathe them in or whatever. But it takes certain specific, and I mean a specific, out of millions and millions and millions of possible frequencies, they tune it into one, and they know exactly which one that is. That makes real sense.
Yeah,
You get a cavitation effect on some nanoparticulate in your body that keeps cavitating when the vibration field is at that would do some damage with you, especially at billions of those little pieces of metal in your body all cavitating at the same time.
Right, it is. And it goes back to frequency, and our bodies, and it's important to unplug. It's imperative to unplug. I mean, I think it's becoming probably the most important thing besides eating and drinking water that we can do today, because the EMF is so thick. It's everywhere, and our bodies were not created to deal with that. If we can, we should be grounding every day. We should be connecting to the earth every day. It's like two magnets. If you put them together, they strengthen each other. And when you ground, there's so many studies of how grounding can really, really help you. It can help blood pressure. It can help you center. It's really good when you meditate. Our earth is really important, and they go above and beyond to keep us from touching her.
Keep wearing your rubber shoes. The soles on your shoes.
Exactly. It's our whole culture, and when we start looking at it, it's just so clear what's been done to us, and I'm going to do a video talking about the food situation from the standpoint of nutritive, value, because there's been so much done from the GMOs. We've talked about this, and it's mind-blowing to see what this accumulative effect can be on a person. So, how many of us are already kind of infected with stuff, and if we roll through New York City or LA, the frequencies that are being emitted, well, they make us sick. Whereas if we went out and we're in the middle of, middle of nowhere, would we be fine?
Right. That's a curious question. How many of us do have these little, I don't know, and then how can you get away from it? For me, it's what I keep going back to is you really have to go within. You really have to go within, connect with earth, eat good food. And we have time right now. So if this is a virus and it's spreading, I'm so sad for the people who have it, but I'm also super grateful that we have time. We have time to boost our immune systems. We have time to ground. And, it's just coming to me now. I think grounding and being connected to the earth, it makes both of us stronger. It makes her stronger. It makes us stronger. I'm really, really, I'm going to do that more. And I think everyone else should too, because I think that boosts our immune system as well as many other things we can do. So we have a lot of opportunity right now, a lot of things to look forward to that we can do to help prepare now.
Yeah, and we're so lucky we do have the extra time, because that was one of the reasons, I was so happy to get in and out of Asia super quickly, is because, I thought I bought myself a couple extra weeks of safety to figure things out here, because it fell apart so fast over there. The way everything just fell apart so quickly was shocking, and I'm still shocked at, how you have these ideas of how societies could fall apart, and how long that might take, and what kind of behavior would occur in a society, but it occurred in like less than 10 days. It's unbelievable how quickly people turned into the basic, very animalistic instinct of stealing food to stay alive, or violence versus cooperation, and it all just went back to the most basic animal instinct within less than just barely a week or more.
Yeah, we got it. Excuse me, guys. I got a cold from the grandkids that's been hanging on. I don't think it's the virus. And actually, it's the first cold I had in 15 years, which tells me, that there's something unusual going on with everything around us. But, coincidentally, I didn't send that photo. Like today, step outside to go in the truck, and there's a big X right over our heads. And, I've noticed the spraying, it's gone to an all new level. And, they put a big X right over the town. And again, this is a town of, we're only talking hundreds. And, there's a couple other towns within 100 miles of here with the same thing, and yet they are, they're just targeting us. And I know this is why, everybody in the town is sick, and this is such a out of the way little place. So I can imagine what it's like, in Wuhan and then other places as well. And I'm hearing from you guys, so many people have, kids that are really, really sick and family members that are really, really sick, and they're not getting better. So they're very concerned. But again, the fear, that brings us down. And I've actually been unplugging things at night and actually sleeping better on the whole. Not just shutting down things or just closing the door, but literally unplugging, and I think that helps.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. If you have now the new laws that are coming out, they've already started this in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. If you cough like you were right there, they can legally grab you now and make you test. And they can hold you until your test results are in for the coronavirus or not. You know that.
Oh yeah,
they can walk up to you on the street and say, "We heard you cough. Now we need to test you. You're coming with us." And whether you want to go or not, and they can stun gun you or whatever to get you to come with them because you're now a possible carrier of it until they clear you. Otherwise, you are under arrest and in quarantine until proven otherwise. And your rights are gone at this point. I wouldn't say it's medical martial law at the moment, but it's getting sort of like if they're going to force test you and hold you against your will. I don't know what you would call that other than your rights are gone. But it's happening in 4 cities right now, and it's planned to roll out to 16 more cities over the next week. And then these 16 military bases that are set up for quarantine centers. So, what's going on here with all this? Something much bigger is on the horizon, or else they wouldn't be making this many preparations for this. So,
right.
Again, keep your health up, because if you cough like you did, Michael, and you're out on the street, who knows where it's going to go? Because there's bounties on people in China now from Wuhan, and anybody who's considered sick, if you report them, you get a reward. And it's political as well, call the quarantine police on somebody you don't like. And I heard them coughing. I think they went to Wuhan, and then they just get rounded up for no reason.
Oh, so it's definitely. I mean, it's the perfect opportunity to get rid of people.
I wonder where you're living. Some quarantine vans rock in and go, "You're sick. You're sick. You're sick. Everybody's coming with us."
Exactly. And let me check this list. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a troublemaker. Aha. Yeah. You got to come with us.
It does make me really grateful to be out in the middle of nowhere. It really does. I mean, it's a pain in the ass to get out here. It's not glamorous. It's not beautiful. It's pretty desolate. It's pretty barren. But at the same time, there's like this solitude out here and this silence out here that I can't find too many other places.
But at the same time, I don't think we're in the best spot.
No.
We're not. I'd rather be well off the beaten path, because there is like a main road that comes through, and to me it's there's still better places.
Oh yeah, we can do better.
Yeah.
Well, I think you'll be guided to the perfect spot.
We're looking for that guidance and doing a ton of research.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off here. I'm getting a little tired because I've been getting up at about 5 a.m. every day now. So my time is winding down.
Well, we thank you as always, brother. It's so good to have you, and I'm really just happy that you're back home too. It's good to have you back here.
Yeah, we did. We sent you tons of positive energy, and we really appreciate you coming back on the show again. It's always super awesome just to hear you guys just chat, and the time always flies by so fast.
It does.
Yeah. Well, when you're thinking in good company with the same ideas in mind, it's easy to just have a real conversation, versus have a bunch of talking points that you need to run through. I mean, we've never even once written a list of stuff to talk about. It's always we just banter back and forth, because we always have so many ideas that, are of like mind, because that's kind of what the space we're both in. We're both drawing from the infinite, river of consciousness. So we could have endless conversations, literally.
Oh, most definitely. And I'm looking forward to some more. So I want to thank everybody that joined us and thank David especially. Guys, take, as I keep saying, take your preps to a higher level. Be prepared for anything. And what we see happening over in China, let's hope the rest of the world doesn't look like that. But I think we should prepare as if it's going to. And at the same time holding love and peace in our hearts. And we'll definitely put out a video. I'm going to really work on that, putting out a positive video kind of / mantra, and maybe just run it at certain times of the day, and we'll try to put that intention out. So thank you guys so much for your support as always on Ko-Fi and Patreon. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.